say to Michael. Let me try and be reasonably concise in terms of why I've just written, why I've written another book. Well, I mean, I can shout that. This is just a mere restriction. Let me just try and be very brief about why I wanted to write this, because essentially I have thought and written and campaigned in a way for a second question beyond this ballot paper. And the reason for that was not to create any confusion about the main thrust of the paper, which would be to say, a ballot paper saying, do you want an independent Scotland? But my concern was that if it was a straight yes or no, or an up or down, as they say in the US Congress, what does that give us then? If we vote yes on the 18th of September, you get independence. If you vote no, what do you get? So I thought the idea of a second question would be to say, instead of the absolute sovereignty of Parliament talking to us, it would be the absolute sovereignty of the people of Scotland. Ticking a box on a second question to say that we wanted this, that, or the other, in terms of more devolution, a stronger Parliament, a different structure of the Union. Now, it didn't happen. I think David Cameron was over-enthusiastic that morning, when he thought, well, way back a couple of years ago, where he thought Alex Salmond needed to be sorted out. It was his kind of, the Apollo 13, Tom Hanks moment. Houston, we have a problem. Westminster, we have a problem. It's Alex Salmond. It's these nationalists. What the hell's going on in Scotland? So I think at that point, it wasn't a reasoned or well thought out argument about a referendum. I think at that point, it was a slam dunk moment for them saying, let's get these people out of the union once and for all. Now, that then, I think on top of no second question, meant that we are at the mercy of what a no vote might mean. So I was sufficiently frustrated about that, and much to the annoyance of a lot of people who are trying to stay reasonably neutral, not part of any campaign. But it's to say on that no question, what will Scotland obtain in 2015, in 2016, two big elections that will take place. And I think the jury's out on that. So the second point that I wanted to emphasise in the book was, again, taking a comment from James Carville, who used to work for Bill Clinton as an election strategist in the early 90s. My second theme was, it's the union's job. Many people say to me, and I've written about it and complimented them, that since 2007, and then in 2011 to now, what we've seen is a situation where the SNP have moved from the margins of Scottish politics to the mainstream, a minority government, a majority government, and hey presto, decided on independence. Now, they've done well in government, populism and competence combining, but there are two things I think that make them look much better than they are. One, the failure of Labour to gain any traction in post-devolution Scotland. And secondly, the decline, in my view, of the Union. I'm not a historian, but there are great historians, including Tom Devining and a colleague, who have looked back at the Union, and I'll deal with that first. It was an artificial construct in 1707, but that's not dwelled there. But the reasons for it being attractive to Wales and Scotland at that point was obvious. But these attractions are no longer relevant in that sense. And in the post-war period, there seems to be a substantial diminution of the authority, the focus, the direction of where the Union was going. So a Union in decline to me seemed important. But then I thought, that's a pretty general phrase. I could say I'm declining after 43 years membership of the Labour Party, 30 years in politics, but what does that actually mean? So what I tried to do then was to strip away some of the issues for the Union. And the first one being, this is a Union that has a ramshackle constitution, which is based on the absolute sovereignty of Parliament. And even academics and lawyers agree that they've no idea where that might have come from. And it no longer exists in the view of the fact that we've got EU, we've got ECHR, and we've got devolution. A coach and horses has been put through this idea of absolute sovereignty, but in the minds of MPs, now hold my hands up, there's one for 14 years, and the institution, nobody is in greater authority than them. So we have a devolution and a Parliament which can be abolished on a one-line bill in the House of Commons on a bad day. So I feel that's uncertain for me in terms of where we're going. The second point, and I think Michael referred to, is about the English. They've been hugely neglected. Because this argument is all about Scotland and our exit or our devolution. England, the biggest part of the UK, has been totally neglected. Now they've developed, helped by Farage, UKIP, Mad Boris, the right of the Conservative Party. This has been turned into a grudging grievance match. The English, as one article said, are now barking. Not a crazy idea, but they are conservative, but they don't know where to go. Figures show that the support for an English Parliament is growing. You know, in the House of Commons, they want other MPs except the English not to deal with their laws. It's a grudging grievance, and hence why England is very much concerned now about Scotland, as Michael said. But my response to England on that particular issue is, we don't get too much money. It's an accepted formula. And if you don't like free care for older people in Scotland, or free tuition fees, or free prescriptions, that's not about money. That's about politics. You know, vote for the right politicians, and you might get some of what Scotland's got. But nevertheless, England has been neglected. And then thirdly, I said, if I vote in this election, in this referendum, will I also be voting to save us not leaving the European Union in 2017? Now, I think it's highly unlikely that the UK would vote to exit. But the exit would be on the back of English votes. Just ship it on. I'm a fanatical European sympathiser, to use that phrase. I teach on Europe. I like Europe. I like the idea of shared and full sovereignty and responsibility. So therefore, the third point was, I don't really want to leave the Union. If I vote no, I'm headed that way. The fourth point is Britishness. Michael knows a lot more than I do. But Scotland's Scottishness is higher, Britishness is a tiny part. But if you look at the English figures now, the Britishness element dwarfs Englishness. And interestingly then, if you go a bit further into this analysis, the Englishness element is voting UKIP. The UKIP element wants out the ECHR jurisdiction, wants out of Europe, and isn't really applying to Scotland. The Britishness element is much more balanced. So I said to myself, okay, that's a political problem. And we're diverging between Scotland and England. Should that worry me? Now I've got two other things. One is inequality. Now, I'm happy to put my hands up and say, as a minister, 14 years, 30 years in politics, did I do much for inequality? Maybe not. And maybe it's because of some age you get a bit more wisdom. Inequality is poisoning the well of UK, US, and Scottish society. It's an obscenity. And the gaps are getting worse. So despite what's happened, or supposed to have happened, inequality. So I'm saying to myself, if I was in Scotland, would inequality be tackled more rigorously? Or would I hang out at Westminster to see marginal improvements over a longer period? So that's the question I'm posing to people, not necessarily answering. The final point then is Labour and the F word. Quickly asked the Federalists. My choice is not on the ballot. I think the union in decline has meant the union structure isn't working. So we have 4 nations, or as someone, I think, inappropriately said, 3.5 nations. We take Wales, Scotland, and England, and we take what might happen to part of Ireland in the future. Surely the emphasis should be on allowing those nations to prosper, develop as they've done in the EU. So at a moment in time, Scotland might want to be Devo Plus, Devo Max, or Federalist. Why should Westminster be able to stop that? Now, if they lost their absolute sovereignty, and if they lost this notion that they devolve power, that devolved power is retained power, it's not even shared power. So I believe that in that context, we need to look at this question of federalism. Now, it's a form of federalism. I'm no expert in federalism, but we have 4 nations of the Union, and we need to rewrite what a treaty might be, and that would mean a huge diminution of power at Westminster, a sharing of power with the other parts of the United Kingdom, and then we develop from that point. So change can happen when a nation's ready, at a point in time, a bit similar to what's happened. And then people say in terms of this federalism issue that they don't want to give too much power to the nations. Look at Germany. I'm very envious of Germany. It cedes power and sovereignty to be in the Eurozone. Does that diminish Germany as a nation? In fact, it enhances it in my eyes. But this is the Westminster argument. You can't do that. They believe in democratic elective centralism. That's what I was brought up on in the House. I didn't know at the time. There were 3 long words, too complicated for me. But that's the mantra that Westminster is based on. So, looking at all of that, I thought it was worth writing, and that's the second big point about what you use. But thirdly, very quickly, I'm also passionately committed, despite what you may hear, passionately committed to the Labour Party. But I've become frustrated and disappointed at how that's developed. Michael talks about social democracy, the social investment state, social partnership, the common good, social justice. Where has that been in this debate? It's not anywhere. And part of that has to be the problem of where is Labour trying to be? Now, you know, I was a socialist grandmother and a Christian socialist grandfather, conservative has never really been part of my life. I admired the Lib Dems because of the federalist nature to them. But Labour, in my judgment, has so much to offer. So part of the book is basically saying they've lost the plot, they've lost the traction, the post-devolution period. How can that regain? And the reason why it's so important, I'll finish on this road. If for any reason there's a yes vote on the 18th, a large part of Scotland would like to see the Labour Party possibly in power running the country. And a lot of other people might not. And what do the Nationalists do? Do they stand as a nationalist party, big N? Because that's quite scary, in a way. So these are opportunities that lie ahead of us. So all in all, I thought, worth putting these ideas down on paper, generating maybe a broader historical debate, a wider horizons debate, and maybe a deeper understanding that if we're diverging from the South, can we analyse, at least assess, what that might mean for an independent Scotland or a restructuring?